This is She Goes Beyond, and I'm your host, Victoria Fregis. Here we're dedicated to changing the status quo and building a powerful community of women who can do it all. Who says you only have to be one thing? So grab your rod or your bow and tune in to the stories of women who love the same things that you do. You never know, you might just meet your next best friend.
The woman, the myth, the legend. One of the few girls I can think of who knows how to finesse a Suic like damn near no man can. She's a musky-loving Canadian native, kicking butt and taking names on the water and in business. Not only has she been helping her mom run Cedar Island Lodge on Pipestone for years, she runs a full-time media marketing business and works for a corporate company. On top of all of this, she dishes out her love for a night in the city and how those girly girl bones actually run deep, even if that's not what we see day to day. Grab your popcorn, babes, because this episode has a part 1 and a part 2. Except I'm making you wait a week for part 2, of course. Let's welcome Jessie Baker.
Well, Jessie Baker, welcome to She Goes Beyond.
I'm very excited to be here. Thank you.
I am so excited to have you. It's honestly an honor. First thing I want to jump into is you were at the Minnesota Muskie Expo. That was your first time there. How was it?
Yeah, it was amazing, actually. I've been to Chicago, Milwaukee. I've never actually been to Wausau either, but it was my first time in Minnesota, and it was really great. There was a lot of awesome people there. I think that's my favorite part, obviously. I don't even go to buy lures anymore. I do. I shouldn't even be lying, but I did buy lures. But it's just nice to see people and connect with people, and it just gets you excited, fishing season's coming up. So,
Yeah. Yeah, for
yeah.
sure. And did you meet anyone like that you hadn't met before? Was it like, I'm assuming
Yeah.
worth your time? Like
Yeah.
what was that like getting to meet people that you hadn't seen before and whatnot?
Yeah, so I always joke, I have this ongoing joke when ran the women's retreat that I have so many friends on social media, but I don't have any friends in real life. So it's always nice to like meet the people that I've been talking to for, in some cases, years. So, well, I met you obviously, and then Nicole King is somebody that I've wanted to meet for a really long time, and I've talked to her quite a bit, and she just seems so legit, but I've just never crossed paths with her. So I was really excited to meet her and hopefully fish with her. And then Ashley Holmgren is another person I've been talking to. It feels like almost my whole muskie career. And I've heard a lot of really good things about her, and some of the people I fish with know her personally. So it was good to, put a face to her name as well. And then I met a lot of people that I don't particularly know, but know me, which is always so like strange and bizarre for me.
Yeah.
But yeah, I met a girl named Hillary who was like a big fan of Doug's show and obviously watches us on YouTube. And then I met a couple other girls that were just like super excited. One girl literally screamed at me and she was like, Jessie Baker. And I was like, yeah. And she was like, everyone here is to see Doug. I'm here to see you. And I was like, right on.
Hell yeah.
But yeah, it was really cool. And I saw a lot of obviously brands that I've worked with and like Mike from Suic and all of those guys, Mark from Red October, just like really cool to see those people in person because I never see those people, right? So it was exciting.
You are a very raw, real human, and I think that is what drew me to you in from the like get-go. You say exactly how it is, and that's my kind of vibe. And what I've noticed in your posts and your stories is that you're not doing this for the fame, for the money, for all that kind of stuff. Not even a little bit. Like
Nope.
you are just a die-hard fisherman. Tell us about the feeling you have out on the water, and when did you feel that for the first time where you're like, this is it. Like this is what I'm meant to be doing.
Yeah, so I actually didn't start out like I fished my whole life. Obviously, I grew up like on the water. My parents have own a fishing resort, but they didn't buy it till about 14 years ago. So that's probably when I really got into it. I didn't really have a choice. My parents were like, hey, you're working for us. And then I never left. But when I started fishing, I was just young and I grew up with brothers, right? And so my dad, I was like the third son. My brothers would hate that I said this, but I was like the most masculine of all of us. And so I would be like the one that would like, go get the partridge and pull the wings off and like cut them up. And like, this is rated R, but we'd kill like snapping turtles, and I'd be like, harvesting for them for their shell and all that kind of stuff. So I actually caught musky fishing is different for me. I caught a muskie when I was 7. My brothers wouldn't take me fishing, so I went out in a paddle boat at my cabin by myself. I was like, oh, my dad caught a bass here once off this tree. I'm gonna catch a bass, and caught a muskie on a worm I picked from the garden. And it was so cool. I actually like back in the day, like this is really bad, but I like put it on a stringer. It was still alive, but I let it swim in the water for like 15 minutes. And my brothers came home, and then I was like, hey, and all his friends were like, whoa, that's so cool. So that was my first muskie I ever caught with my dad, which was really special. And then I never really got into musky fishing. I bass fished, walleye fished. Lake trout fishing is probably what I've been doing the most since I was a kid. My parents love to lake trout fish. And so when we bought the resort, a guest of mine actually took me musky fishing, and I had my first follow, and that was it. And when I say like I went my first full season, I didn't catch a single muskie. Like not I seen a couple, but I didn't catch any. And I was like, the one fish that I saw with that customer just kept me going. And I was like, I want to experience that. I want to feel that again. Like I love adrenaline. And so going into my next season, I just watched a lot of YouTube videos. I started talking to a lot of the guests there. I was starting from scratch. My parents never musky fished, right? And so I just learned. And then every year I progressively got better. And then obviously I met Doug, went to boot camp with him and got pretty good. And so when I fish, I mean, obviously fishing is an adrenaline rush for me. It's just like I can't get enough. And I think because I have a master's degree in psychology, and I'm all about like trying to figure out why people are the way they are, why they say the things that they say, do the things that they do. And it's like fishing is the same for me, especially muskies. I'm like, why didn't this fish eat? Or like, what could I have done? Or if I put my bait in this scenario, why is it like more attractive than that? And so I got obsessed with it, and to the point where obviously I met Doug and we got obsessed with it together. When I'm out there, it's different on every lake, but like Pipestone, which is my home, I just feel so much solitude that it's just, there's no feeling like being out there, especially alone, and like accomplishing something that's so hard for me. So that's probably the best way I could kind of summarize how it makes me feel.
That's a really good answer. So when we were at the Muskie show this past weekend, Kyle and I actually talked to Doug on Sunday, and it was kind of a surreal moment for me because you watch him on YouTube, and I did not want to talk about him, so damn it. But I wanted to keep it all about you, but I just need to give you a shout out almost from him. But we were talking to him, and we were talking about you, of course, and being on this podcast, and he's like, Jessie, every year, like we'd talk, we'd meet up, we spend some time together, then she'd go back to Pipestone every summer and work. And he's like, every single year she got better. Like I barely gave her any tips. I just told her like, hey, tweak this or like whatever, but she did it on her own. Like he is so proud of you, and how like he's a great muskie fisherman, but Jessie, you are too, and you did that on your own. Like I'm sure he's great help, but I don't know, just pretty awesome. You are a badass.
Yeah, and I mean, Doug is a huge part of my story, right? Like I don't ever like I mean, I feel accomplished on my own, and that's really something that I'm proud of, and I try to instill like with the women's retreat and stuff, is to give women this independence on the water. Because I mean, I guess maybe I'm a little bit of a feminist, but I'm like, ladies, we don't need a man to do this. It is great to fish with your partner. I love fishing with Doug, and like I said, I learned so much from him. But until the like last 3 years, I had never, other than my mom and a couple of like friends that I grew up with, never musky fished with a woman in my life. I mean, and the musky industry is hard because it is so competitive. And then you get women, and like, listen, I was on like a national dating TV show where it's like you are set up to compete with other women. And as confident as I am in who I am and what I stand for, when you get around other women that are, good and beautiful and confident, all these things, you start to second guess yourself. So when I had this women's retreat, I was like, I don't know how this is going to go. Like, I'm a little bit intimidated. I think a lot of them came in intimidated, but like, I was like, I don't fucking need to fish with Doug ever again because I got girls now, which is so cool because I think it's just with Doug, and I'm sure a lot of spouses, you probably maybe feel the same about Kyle, is like, I get pushed to my extreme with him. Like, and I know he does it because he's like, I want to push you to be the best that you can be. because that's just how he operates, right? And it has pushed me outside my comfort zone and made me a better angler. But there's some scenarios where I'm like, it almost takes away a little bit where I'm like, now I don't want to fish because I'm not relaxed. This is too intense. Like, can you just get out of the boat? Like we were shooting bows the other day and I was like, I can't shoot a bow with you because he's like, hey, tweak this, tweak this, tweak this. And I'm like, I'm just trying to hit the fucking target. Like, just back off. So I will say, like, he's obviously a huge part of my story, but it's so cool now that I'm starting to experience this balance of like fishing with other women, which is really empowering for me, fishing by myself, and then fishing with Doug, obviously. So it's nice to be able to do both. And I want to just encourage women to not only like do that, but like feel confident doing, right? Because it's weird. I was talking to some girl about I was talking to you about figure eighting, and it's how it's like it's an uncomfortable thing until you do it so many times that you're like, okay, this is normal now.
Yeah.
But when
Right.
people start, they're like, I don't know. And I'm like, I was the same way. I'm like really tight. And I'm like, this is awkward. And then it just becomes practice and, being on the water and doing it. And I will say, pushing yourself outside your comfort zone at times is 100% necessary because you don't grow in your comfort zone, right? So yeah, I feel like I have like a good tribe of like people I could be like, hey, do you want to go fishing now? And I don't have to go by myself.
Right, right. No, and I think
So,
that's such a good, like a positive thing about like these musky shows. And like you said, you met some girls you're hoping to get out with Nicole and like, things like that, being able to grow that community. And that's like what I'm trying to do here too, is like get to know you girls and kind of grow my own tribe because I am someone I've always been with my dad. We have hunted, we trapped, we fished together. Then I moved to dating Kyle and like now he's my person and that's my comfort zone. And while he still pushes me out of my comfort zone, I have another piece of that to go off of your comment, but I don't have a lot of girlfriends who do anything that I like to do. Like there's just not a lot of women around me that do that. And I didn't grow up with a lot of women who were as passionate about it as I was. So getting to like put yourself out there and meet people and grow that like friendship is so cool. Like I had Sarah from Wisconsin on as my first episode for this podcast. And she's actually going to be at the Wausau show this weekend. So we're going to meet up and I'm going to get to meet her friend Dory and all these things. And I'm like, this is what I wanted. I wanted to just have people in my corner so that at some point when I'm comfortable enough, which I don't know when that will be, but I would be able to take my own bucket and go sit out on the ice and do that. And I'm going to be honest, I've never done that. Like it's very intimidating to me because I've never done it. I've never had to do it. So I don't know. I think that there's just something so special about growing that community and being able to have those people in your back pocket when you're like, hey, are you free? Do you want to go just hang out
yeah.
with me and just go fish or whatever? On the other note, Kyle and I were talking about this podcast episode and he's like, I think maybe later this fall or next year we should have both Jessie and Doug on here and we should call it couples therapy because Jessie, you and Doug, we're so similar in the way that we talk and act with our spouses, but Kyle is the same way. Him and Doug are very similar in the sense that they are out there to crush. Like they want to do well. It's no messing around. Like it's always the Super Bowl. And
Yeah.
I'm very much like, I want to enjoy this.
Yeah.
Don't piss me off. And
Yeah.
will like, it's the constant like, oh, you could have done that. And I'm like, clearly
Yeah.
I could have done that differently. I didn't catch the fish. Thank you. Like I
Yeah.
am
Yeah.
so bad at taking criticism and it's something that I'm working on. But
Yeah.
I do love feedback, but it's like in the moment when he's just like on my case and I'm like, stop. But
Yeah. And you
yeah.
have so many emotions. It's like especially like I don't even know how to explain it to like people, even if you're listening and you don't musky fish. Like it's such a weird and it almost like sounds like kind of pathetic that when you lose a fish, like it hurts like
Oh,
deep in your soul. And like it's not something you can just get over. And so I'm like a very like positive, optimistic person. So I always have to remind myself, okay, just let it go because if I don't let this go, it's going to affect the next fish that I have an encounter with. But the difference is like between any other species for the most part, you only get like one chance or two chances, maybe if you're lucky, three chances a day. And so like if you get only one chance and you screw it up, it haunts you because you're like, and it's all what, shoulda, coulda, woulda. And then you're like, oh, and then yeah, and then you got your spouse or whoever chirping in the background. And so like the difference with fishing with women is like, and so I had a hard time giving constructive criticism to clients, especially if they were women, because I don't know how they're going to take it, right? And so I come off obviously like very genuine, but I'm like, even if I say, hey, Victoria, like you got a little go a little wider in your corners, like in my mind as a woman, I'm like still like, fuck, I'm not doing a good job then. And so it's like a self-confidence thing, right? But I what I did learn is I had a woman come up and she had her first figure eight fish ever, and I didn't even know that. I should have like talked to her beforehand, but I didn't correct her figure eights, and so she had a fish come in. It was like a 4-footer. It's her first fish ever come into the boat, and she was too tight in the eight. And the thing, I swear to God, I would have given my left kidney to have that figure eight because that fish was going to eat no matter what. And it was like it was doing like ballerina spins, like trying to eat it because her eight was so tight. Like I bet you it was like this tight. And so
Mhm.
I was like, you know what? If I would have corrected her and just told her, go a little bit wider in your turns, she would have caught that fish. And it would have made a difference for her in her confidence. And it would have been the first muskie she ever caught. So I was like, I have to like border this line of like, I'm giving constructive criticism because I want you to perform better and I want you to have a better experience. And that's how Doug sees it too. I'm sure Kyle too. Like being a guide, he's like, it is my job to get people fish. If they don't get people fish, they're not, 100% satisfied. But if they're not doing a good job, I have to be the one to train them. So that's like why I hate guiding because I'm like, this is too much pressure. But when you fish with women, because they don't offer it as much, or maybe they offer it in a little bit more of a gentle way, it's just such a different vibe because it just gives you confidence to do it on your own. And then you don't have a choice. I always say with our partners, like especially men in our lives, like even my dad, like I watch my dad with my mom, like men don't have patience like women do. So they're like, I don't want to teach you how to do it because that's going to take me a long time. It's going to be frustrating for all of us. So I'll just do it for like running the trolling motor. I had a lot of girls come up and they're like, I don't know how to run the trolling motor. I was like, man, I see you fishing all the time. And they're like, yeah, but my husband does it. And I'm like, fucking girl, get up there and learn how to run the trolling motor because then you get your husband to launch the boat if you don't know how to launch a boat. I'm not the best at launching a boat either. My boat's always been on the water.
Right.
So get your guy to launch your boat in the water, say see you in 8 hours, go on the water. And if you know how to run the trolling motor and the big putts around in the big motor, you can do whatever you want.
Oh my God.
So it's just like putting yourself in those scenarios, which like I know are super uncomfortable, but then you're like, I will, like I said this earlier, like for me to be able to do it on my own, it feels so good. Like I try to be like humble, obviously, but I'm just like, oh, I'm like a badass out here, just like no one else is out here. And it's a shit show every time I'm fishing by myself. But if I had to wait on Doug to go fishing, I'd never go fishing because he's fishing with other people all the time to make a living. So
Yeah, I loved what you just said that truly guys can't, they don't want to teach, they just want to tell you what to do. Like they're
it's
just
just
like,
easier for them.
there's no time because they just, yeah, they just want you to do it right. But
Yeah,
yeah,
yeah. And you're gonna do it wrong 100 times before you get it right. Like when I say probably took me, I've been musky fishing for like almost 11 years, and I bet you it took me 5 years to get really good at figure eights. And I didn't get good at them until I met Doug. Also, it helped that I went to Lake of the Woods, which is a ton of boatside encounters, which is not like Pipestone. It more so is now, I guess, because I'm starting to learn the lake better. But there, you don't have an opportunity because fish are always coming to the boat. So it's like you get, 10 to 15 encounters a day, which is very strange. But it's like practice. It's like go, 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 go. And so, I mean, there, it also is a little bit easier. If you screw the first one up, you're like, okay, I'm probably going to get another one.
yeah, we're definitely going to get into that more. But you grew up in Canada. Did your parents own Cedar Island Lodge your whole life, or did they buy it
They
like,
bought it they bought it 14 years ago. So I had a cabin on Clearwater, which is the chain of lakes that goes into Pipestone. So we've had that cabin since I was 4.
okay.
So that's where I grew up. And then my parents like randomly sat my brothers and I down. Like, what was I was just going into my first year of college and they're like, we bought a tourist resort. And I was like, okay, this is kind of weird. Like we didn't even know that they were thinking about it. And then phew, here we are. Here we
Yeah,
are. 15 years
yeah.
later, I'm just like, okay, this is my life. I'm 32 years old and I still live with my parents in the summertime.
Oh God. So okay, well, my question to tell us about growing up as a resort kid is out of the question. Well, I guess so then what was it like? You were in college, you were clearly going to school, you graduated with a degree. How did that look? How did they rope you back into coming home and working at the resort?
Yeah, so like my parents just bought it, and then the first year that my parents opened the resort, my dad actually got diagnosed with cancer, and so he had a tumor that he had to get removed, and so I took my dad to Winnipeg, which is the closest city, to get this tumor removed, and my mom, who is like, I'm more like my dad, like way outgoing and confident. And my mom's like a little shy, reserved, and like doesn't have like as much confidence. She's about to host our first ever guests, and it's a corporate group of like 24 people. And we've never ran a resort before. And my dad's not there, and I'm not there. So we had hired a couple friends had come to help out. And so that was kind of like we just got thrown into it. And then I was in college, so it worked out good. Every summer I would go home, work at the resort, make some money and then go back to school. And then I got my master's degree in psychology, and I was working as a youth counselor from basically like September to May. And then I was taking a leave of absence for like the first 2 years that I was doing it to go work at the resort. And it wasn't possible like after 2 years, because as somebody who goes to counseling, like you need stability and you need like consistency. And so me kind of just coming and going was really hard. And it was really hard for me. It was a really tough career. I'm like very empathetic, and like I was absorbing a lot of that. And so I left that and just like started doing like random things on my own to like make money in between camp season. And I just kept going back. Like, so I was like, this will be my first year, which is kind of sad that I won't be there full time. So I'm going to go back and forth a little bit. I have some guide trips and stuff, but my dad passed away in 2021, and the resort for me has always been like my home. It's been very like family oriented and like a comfort for me. And so when my dad died, obviously everything in my life changed because we were like all of us were really close, but I kind of like started to see camp as camp, which it never was. And I started building a home with Doug on Lake of the Woods. And so I said, my mom listed it for sale. So if anyone wants to buy a camp, but I know my mom will be very fussy of who she hands it off to in a sense, because it's very sentimental to us and it means a lot. But I kind of had to have an exit plan. So I started my marketing company 3 years ago. And like that was kind of like what I was like kind of doing part time, and now it's full time. And so, yeah, camp is like, it's weird to explain because I live there in a 10 by 10 room. And out of all the places I've lived in my life, and I've moved a ton of different places, like every season I'd leave camp, I'd go somewhere new, Toronto, Winnipeg, Green Bay, whatever. It's like that 10 by 10 room has been my comfort zone for 14 years of my life. Like, it's so cozy and it's so homey to me. So it'll be a different change, but I'm excited this year because it gives me an opportunity I love Pipestone. Like my heart will always be there, but I want to go fish like other people. I want to fish these different lakes. I want to go to Eagle in the summer and experience the bucktail bite. And I want to fish Lake of the Woods and have all these encounters. And I've never had the opportunity to do so because, when I work at camp May through October, it's 7 days a week, 16 hours a day. So I'm gonna be stepping outside my comfort zone, which is, as I said, I'm like, I almost have like a little anxiety because I'm like, oh shit, I'm gonna have to like eat my words out of this podcast here. I'm like backing boats in, doing the whole shebang. So yeah, I hit a place in my life where I've kind of like plateaued, where I'm like, how do I grow from here and like have different experiences? I hope to, hopefully in the near future start a family. And so I'm like, let's get going. Let's do some trips, let's catch some fish.
Right? Right? So
So
you just keep leading into all my questions, which is great. But tell us what makes Pipestone so special to you. I've never been there. That's like a lake that I feel like is on people's bucket list, but tell
mhm.
us why it should be on people's bucket list.
Yeah, what's so funny is when I first started, like when we first bought Pipestone, I've been fishing there since I was a kid for lake trout, and it's always been special to me. But I think no one really talked about it before. And then, I don't know if it was Doug filming up there or what it is. Like Babe Winkleman used to film up there, Dick Pearson, like way back in the day, but no one ever talked about it, right? So it's always been special to me because obviously my family's there, and I that is the first lake that I learned how to musky fish on and gain confidence. And like I go to Lake of the Woods now for 3 days, and sometimes I'll have like a lot of times I not have the best trip. I'll catch, a couple 42 inchers, and then I go back to Pipestone. It's like my first spot. I catch like a 49 incher, and I'm like, why do I leave this place? Like it just treats me so good. But it is the most humbling lake you'll ever fish. It's a clear water lake. The muskies there are like extra intelligent for some reason. But what makes it so special is it kind of is like in a sense undiscovered. If you go out and see, now it's a little bit different. I've seen it change in the last 10 years, but like when I first started fishing there, if I went out fishing and saw a boat, I'd be shocked. Like you don't see people there, right? And so now you maybe see a couple people here and there, but the solitude of it makes it so special. And not just musky fishing. like what I'll do is I'll go out and I'll musky fish majors and minors. I'm a big majors and minors girl. And outside of majors and minors, I'm like, I can go catch a lake trout. I can go try to catch a big walleye. Maybe I'll go bass fishing. I don't know. So it's so funny you say this because I'm like almost now, like as my mom, this has been my business to advertise my resort for 14 years. And now I'm like, I'm leaving. Maybe we don't talk about Pipestone because I'm like getting that musky person protectiveness, but I think everyone should have the experience to fish it. And like when I hosted that retreat, and even like a lot of our guests too, it's like how they talk about it. Like I had a customer, he's like, the air up here, it just like smells different, like it smells sweeter. And I was like, that is so nice. Like it means so much to me that like it feels special to them. So it feels special to me, I think, for a different reason because, my family was there and I grew up there and all that kind of stuff. But everyone that comes there, no matter what you catch for fish or, the encounters that you have, it is just such a beautiful lake to be on. Like it's really big rock cliffs and lots of big pine trees. And if you're like an outdoorsy person, like I don't know, I guess sometimes I go and lay in my boat and I'm just like, I just love this place so much.
Just straight heaven.
Yeah, pretty much. So yeah, if anyone gets the opportunity to fish it, like you have to take a portage, right? So like a
Right.
lot of local people, portage is getting expensive. When I first started going there, it was like 20 bucks. Now it's 40, but not a lot of locals come over because it's a $40 round trip. So like why would they come? They can fish muskies. The only thing they can't fish is lake trout. So a lot of it's a whole experience. It's a journey to get there. You got to get on your boat, you got to get on the trailer and everyone's like, "Hey, like is this going to like mess my boat up?" Like you show up to this operation and like if you guys look it up on YouTube and you're like the cart's like duct taped and like shit like you're like, am I surviving this? I don't know. That's the best part, just because everyone like shows up there. If they don't know, they're like, call us. They're like, so do we get on this thing? Like, is it insured? And we're like, nope. So like enjoy the journey over.
You'll be
But
fine.
you'll be fine. I always like say, like people will be like, I'm bringing a whatever kind of boat. And I'm like, that thing has seen every boat. And like Doug's boat actually, the first time he went on it, fell off. And I'm not trying to say that to scare people, but it was a shit show operation. And my dad was running it because the guy that owned it wasn't like he was incapacitated at the time. And so Doug put his boat on there and he didn't put it far enough off. So like when you have a heavy engine like that, you can only hang it off like probably like 10 inches to a foot. But anyways, it pulled out of the water and all of a sudden it's just like I could see his boat. His motor was too heavy and the prop or the skag just touched their like railroad tracks just touched the timber. And then I think what they had to do is like put a bunch of guys in front to get it up just a little bit to then push it back in. That doesn't never happen. It was like such a funny experience because I was like, I walked to the other side. I'm like, Doug's never coming back here. Like, this is his first trip. I'm like, he's never coming back here. But he kept coming, so that's good.
Didn't
But
scare him off. Oh my God.
yeah, it was
Well,
it was actually really funny, but like also not funny.
no, not funny. Not funny, but hilarious at the same time. So you kind of mentioned that you like to fish the majors and the minors on Pipestone. Is that where you're finding that the bite is the best? Like, what is the bite like on Pipestone, I guess?
Yeah, so like I mean, Doug will go out. He makes fun of me because I've had the luxury the last couple of years with obviously my mom running the resort and like in the daytime if there's not a lot of like jobs to get done because we have employees there, I'd be like, hey, I don't want to get paid. I just want to like fish on my own time. And so I would fish the majors and minors. So to me, they work, but then I'm like, I'm only really fishing majors and minors. So I obviously fish a little bit outside of majors and minors, but the bite window on Pipestone, it kind of depends. And then I figure out a theory and then it doesn't work again.
Yeah.
But the one thing I found that's consistent is new moons are way better than full moons. Like for some reason, like the consistency is longer. And someone else told me, I think maybe Kurt from Thorn Brothers, he's like, full moon will have shorter bite windows, but more intense, but new moon will be like more drawn out. And that's what I see. Like, I just, anyone that's coming, I'm like, come on a new moon because, fish are showing up, they're more consistent. But I think also the more time I've put into Pipestone, the more I've learned about it. And if I'm not finding fish on certain structure, like I fish really deep, right? It's a deep Clearwater lake. It's like 225 feet deep at its deepest. If I'm not finding fish deep, so on like rock beds and stuff like that, reefs, deep points or whatever in the summertime, then I'll just scoot into like sloppy, sweetie shit that normally they wouldn't go into. But for some reason, I don't know if they're in there just sunning or whatever it is. There's one time a year in this in early summer too that the shiners spawn on sand, and so I'll fish a little bit of sand and stuff like that. But I don't attribute my success to mine majors and minors, even though I am a big majors and minors person.
Mhm.
I think because I put so much time on Pipestone, and like, and there's still spots that every year I'm like, I'm gonna fish the shoreline. I've never even driven down the shoreline. And I spent like the first like 3 years that I got an otter chart chip, which is probably like 5 years ago, mapping like everywhere I went. I map and map. Still to this day, if I get to a spot and it's already mapped, I'll map over it
Yeah.
so I can see. There's no map, no contour map. So when you get there, you're blind. You're like, where am I going? I use Google Earth a lot to find things. And it's weird too, as I've noticed, like over the years, I'll have a really consistent spot one season, and then the next season, it's just like there's no fish there. And so then I'll find, I'll be like, okay, what structure's close to this? Like, say there's a big weed reef, it's holding a lot of fish one season. Okay, I show up there next season. I fish there like a few times. I'm like, there's no fish here. Like, so where are those fish moving off? So then I'll, it's usually there's deep water, and then outside of that deep water, maybe on the opposite shoreline, the east shoreline, there'll be like a rock hump. I'll go there, and then there's like fish there. So I don't know. I mean, I think a lot of, you can attribute education to a lot of it, but a lot of it's just guessing. You're like, you know what? And to me, I'm like a very, like, I like to think I'm an intuitive person, and I'm like, this just feels right for me. And people will be like, oh, that's so like witchy wooey of her, but it is. But like, I'm a believer in the manifestation. So if I go to a spot and I'm like, it just doesn't feel right, I won't even fish it, because in my head, I'm not catching a fish there, right? So I fish a ton of shorelines, like long extended shorelines, which is so boring. So what I started to do is when I fish these long shorelines, I probably fish almost every shoreline in one area of the lake. And then every time I catch, see, lose a fish, and I see it on my electronics or I see it with my eyes, catch a fish, lose it, I mark it with a waypoint that's a color. So purple fish means I caught it. Blue fish means I lost it. Red fish means it's a fish. And then green ones, I saw it with my graph. Yellow, I saw it with my eye. So I started marking every time I seen it. And now I can look at my map and be like, holy shit, like you'll see along these shorelines, the whole shoreline looks amazing. It's all boulders, but there's like these little like nuggets that like extend out, like even just like if it's like 6, 7 feet further than the other point, and these fish like pool up there. So I look at my graph now and I'm like, oh, this is the pattern, right? So that was one thing that really helped me that I started to do probably, yeah, like 3, 4 years ago. And Doug does it too, but he changes color every year. But it was just really interesting to see places that you were catching fish that you probably would overlook any other time, because you're like, oh, I look at this whole shoreline, it's good. I fish it for, say I fish the shoreline for 200 yards, I don't see a fish, I'm out of there in most cases. But this one time, I was like, I just got to fish this whole thing. It's going to suck. I'm going to put a bucktail on. I'm going to put the trolling motor at 2, and I'm just going to whip down here and see what happens. And I've done that a few different times, because you can't just do it once, because, you go to a spot. I've done this tons of times. I go to a spot, I fish a spot, I don't see a fish, I leave, I never go back.
Yeah.
And I'm like, this spot looks amazing. And then I'll have a guest, which is another really great thing to be at a resort and own a resort for, is because everyone comes and talks at the end of the day, right? And they're like, oh, fishing Sully's and had this like big 48 come up, and they're like, hey, yeah, like like I won't ever go on someone's fish if they're there, but then they leave and they're like, hey, go on this fish. And I'm like, done. I'm going for it. And so I'd learn, shit, I was fishing that spot. I fished that spot twice and never seen a fish. And then this guy's like, oh yeah, man, it's like one of our best spots. And I'm like, I just didn't give it enough time. So that's one, like, it really, like, if you're starting musky fishing too, is like, you can't give up on a spot until you've tried it, a handful of times, to make sure that like fish, you just might not be there at the right time.
NetBuddy. Products that are innovative, allow any angler to be self-sufficient on the water, assist with resource preservation, and help keep your expensive gear safe. Matt's Musky Buddy is arguably the most innovative tool to hit the musky industry in the last 10 years. Whether it's a track, rail, or transom mount your boat requires, the Musky Buddy secures your net to the side of your boat after a muskie or other large fish species is caught, keeping the fish in the water while you grab your release tools, get your bump board ready, and camera. Talk about peace of mind. Knowing your trophy is less stressed and ready to release to grow even bigger, you can attach the Musky Buddy to any net and any boat. However, if you really feel like diving in, grab the Musky Buddy net, which has the Musky Buddy puck integrated into the yoke. This net uses the highest grade aluminum available in the musky net market and has been designed with a thoughtful and heavy-duty design to ensure it can keep your trophy secure for years to come. This net is available in 2 sizes and features a coated 45-inch deep bag to help keep your trophy in the water regardless of the boat you own. If muskies aren't your thing, check out their neoprene rod, graph, and transducer covers to help keep your investments safe. Regardless of your fish species flavor, you can help support innovation, resource preservation, and quality products by checking out their website at thenetbuddy.com.
Right
Yeah,
season, whatever it is.
not fishing it the right way either. Like I know up in on Eagle, we now go two weeks. Kyle goes the
Mhm.
first week and stays the second week, and Levi and I show up the second week. And we noticed like last year, and I'm sure actually Kyle's probably noticed it before, but something that I caught on to last year was we fished a spot and then we fished it a different way, and then
Yep.
you fish. So like also like you said, it's so important to, especially in like highlight, what we've found is if it's a really sunny day, not feeling fishy, go map the lake. Like especially with Eagle and Pipestone, these lakes that don't have good maps already, like go map it with, if you have the luxury to do so, like go map it and drive over those spots, really understand like where all the structure is, where are the weeds starting so that you don't end up right on top of the fish. And then, you also like learning which way to go in on those fish.
Oh yeah, like I've seen that so many times too, where people come to Pipestone and I said, even if you don't have an auto chart, just make some waypoints of like, so like the most important thing is you're not cutting off the structure, right? Especially on a deep body of water, like those fish are just hanging just off the structure, right? And so if you are fishing too tight, they're like a lot of the times, I have a live scope in my boat. So sometimes when I'm fishing muskies, I'll just point it out backwards to see what's going on. Like sometimes there's tons of bait fish behind me and I have no idea because I'm so tight to the structure. So I think I read it in Muskies on the Shield and maybe Dick told me, but he said, especially on deep water, when you fish a spot, you should fish it twice almost, like fish it shallow and then fish it again deep, like way out where like you're fishing it so you're hitting on top of the structure. And then your next go around, you're fishing it so you're just hitting the edge of the structure. Because those fish, depending on what cycle they're at and they're feeding or like the moon phase is at, they're not always on top of the structure. And I always kind of like believe that a lot of our fish in deep water, they don't like they're just coming in, on these rocks to just sun. They're actually going out deep to feed. All of our main bait fish are ciscos, perch and stuff like that. And they're all out deeper. So it kind of just changed it makes fishing obviously a lot longer and like maybe a little bit harder, but there's some spots in Pipestone that in a milk run session where I'm going out guiding, I'll fish 3 or 4 times because I'm like, I know there's fish here. They're just maybe sitting off the edge or they haven't come in yet or they're not biting because that does happen. I mean, if you throw a bait at a muskie, it's like there's like a 15% chance it's going to eat it. So I don't think people understand that where you're like, I mean, live scope has like been the most humbling thing people talk about in Minnesota, like, oh, sharpshoot and stuff like that, which everyone can do whatever they want as long as it's, safe and good for the fish. But that's not a thing on Pipestone. Like I could never do that. I'm like, I'm gonna try that. And I'm like, oh, 3 hours, haven't seen a fish. I'm like, but you just don't like it's so different, right? The structure's a lot different. And so it's yeah, the one thing I could say about anyone that's, like wants to be better at musky fishing or, just starting out is like it really is frustrating because you do have to put time in. Like that's the only way you learn. And I've said this on like multiple different like podcasts and stuff too, is you guys should be like asking questions. Like when I started, I was very intimidated to ask questions. I didn't even really know anyone. Like I just started as like essentially a nobody. I didn't like social media wasn't as big of a thing as it now. Like I didn't know any musky fishermen other than people at camp, but I would talk to people at camp and be like, like, why do you use that like a bucktail at this time? Or like would you use a suic? And now I talk to like people like Dick Pearson where I'm just like, trying to just absorb as much information as I can because you never know everything. And like if you think you do, you're gonna like set yourself up for not as much success because when you're open to like learning more, you like learn new things. And even Doug, like he's constantly learning new stuff and trying new stuff. And I think that's why the sport of musky fishing is why it keeps us going is because like as soon as you figure something out, it like doesn't work anymore. And you're like, now I gotta figure something else out. What a mental sport.
Oh, honestly, I've heard many people say this, but you are mentally unwell if you're a musky fisherman. Like,
Or like, what are you doing with a psychology degree? Like working in a tourist resort, like being a guide musky fishing. And I'm like, yeah, you're not a musky fisherman, I can tell.
yeah, you
Because
don't.
it's like the mental game you are playing is with yourself. It's like you're not even like, it's not you versus the fish, it's like you versus you.
100%. Yeah.
Mhm.
Okay, so you guys just built a house on Lake of the Woods,
Well, we
right?
bought a house, but yeah, we just
Oh,
renovated it. We just
okay,
renovated stuff.
renovated it. Have you since then have you been fishing on Lake of the Woods? I know you said you've been there. Like, have
Yeah.
you've been there?
Yeah. So yeah, we've been there for 2 years and I've fished since we've been there, but I've never actually like fished on my own. I don't even think I've ever fished alone on Lake of the Woods, if I'm being honest. I've ice fished on Lake of the Woods alone, but I don't think I've ever fished in a boat alone. And so like that's a whole new world for me. I fished a muskie tournament there like almost 10 years ago with one of my really good friends from back home. And I like took a tiller from camp like 20 miles out into Lake of the Woods. And then we were coming back and there was like 4 foot waves and we like almost died. And I was like, okay, I think that I should probably settle down on my decisions here. But I'm like super excited to. I'm actually, this is like musky people won't like this, but I'm actually very excited to like fish a little bit of multi-species. Like, we fished with Jeff Gustafson this fall, and he's like, "Oh, the bass fishing out here has like been really good." And so I'm like, I kind of want to do like a bunch of different stuff and just try it. And I say that now, watch guys, I'll just be like musky fishing the whole. As soon as I see a muskie, I'm not thinking about anything else. But right now I have high hopes that I'm going to fish for something other than a muskie. But we live right on the lake, but we can't have a boat just because it's wide open, like a boat dock in the water. So there's a resort there I'm just gonna park my boat at, and then I can just take it out when I want to and go wherever I want to go. Doug and I are going on a few trips this year. I have like 15 days straight fishing on trips with Doug, so I'll probably be in a mental institution after that. But yeah, I'm just Lake of the Woods. I have a like vendetta with Lake of the Woods because I talk about it so highly, right? And it's like it is such an amazing fishery, and I know it is, and I know it's getting more difficult because you'll pressure and stuff. But because I have so much confidence in Pipestone, and because it treats me so well, like I said, every time I go to Lake of the Woods, it's like the most humbling experience for me. Like Doug will be like, "Oh yeah, we just like caught like 18," and then I show up the next day and we see like 2 fish, and I'm like, "What the fuck? Like what? Why did I come here?" And then I go to Pipestone, I catch that 49 incher, and I'm just like, never going back there again. So I have some shit to work out with Lake of the Woods this summer. And I think if I put some time in on my own, I'll get some confidence in it. And yeah, I get to throw like, two of my favorite baits, a bucktail and a suic, which is like pretty much all they eat there. And I mean, they do eat some rubber, and I'm gonna throw some top water. So that's exciting because I'm used to throwing a lot of rubber, like deep clear water tubes and dogs, double dogs and all that shit. So it's exciting that I can just put on a bucktail and just whip around. So
Yeah, so you guided back on Pipestone. Are you gonna guide on Lake of the Woods?
Everyone keeps asking me that, and I'm like, so like, I mean, I've met so many amazing people being a guide, and like, and maybe to be different, like guiding at a resort versus what Doug does is a lot different. I'm like actually like a very like hard-shelled person, but I'm like very soft inside, and like I take things very personally, and so like, if we have a hard day and we don't catch fish or anything, like even if my customers aren't unhappy about it, I am like it affects me. Like I like and like a night before a guide trip, I can like barely sleep because I'm like, okay, I'm going here and I'm going here. And I'm like, I didn't see a fish here. And then I'm like, okay, I got to get off my milk run. Okay, well, I didn't see a fish. So I'm going to get on my milk run. And so I think I'll just play it by ear. If there's some people that like I know personally that want to go out for a guide trip or something like that, maybe, but I don't think I'll advertise it just because I'm also an introvert at heart. So I'm like, maybe I'll just fish with my inner circle and leave the guiding to Doug.
Yeah, I don't think there's anything wrong with that. You kind of had a fun run doing it for the resort and
Yeah.
like
Yeah,
also
and And I would like to do like more of these retreats and stuff like that. Like right now I'm not hosting my own. I'm just a part of the one on Lake to the Woods. But if I could set something up that was an opportunity, like even not just women's retreats, but like maybe couples retreats or just like fishing retreats in general. Because so I love the idea of the women's retreat because like I said, it is an empowering thing to be surrounded by women. And I think it gives women coming in a sense of like comfort where it's like you don't have to worry about guys judging them and stuff. But like I also do want to say that I think there's a lot of misrepresentation of some men in the industry where like one bad apple like spoils it for like us women. And when I first started, I took a lot of slack. Like there was a lot of guys, even one of the local guys on my lake he's like probably in his 70s. He's a great guy. He's like a really good friend of mine now. But he's like, honestly, when you first started fishing and like we're posting about it, he was like, I just thought you were some like internet bimbo. And I was like, that's valid because like, I mean, there is some of those people, but he's like, now that I know you, like, he's like, yeah, like you're legit. And I think sometimes like I hear people like, men are so disrespectful of women. I actually someone did like a master's thesis and had me involved in it. And I was like, you know what? Maybe at sometimes I've like felt that, but I feel so respected by men in this industry. And like, I don't know if that's weird to say, but like, I don't have a problem going out and like fishing with guys. Like, if a guy was like, hey, I want to come fishing with you, I'd be like, cool. Like, as long as you're a good person, I don't care. So I think it would be cool to like just have more scenarios where you do kind of fish with other people and you do collaborate. And like, we're a like-minded community, whether we're men or women, we all just want to go out and we want to fish and we want to have fun. And so there's times in my life where I'm like, yeah, I want to fish, just with girls, or I just want to fish with Doug or whatever. I'm just like, I have a lot of guy friends that I go fishing with that I just want to say that because I feel like a lot of guys are like, I mean, there's shitty guys out there, but like, let's be honest, there's shitty girls out there that are, like catty and, not authentic or genuine or whatever it is. It just, for me, it comes down to the person. So I would like to, do that a little bit more and kind of create this like community where everyone just like does it because they like it. And maybe you probably feel it too in the musky industry. Like everyone's so like kind of uptight and it's like, I don't want to give my spots away. I don't want stealing my spots. And I'm just like, okay, I get it to a point because I'm like protective now of Pipestone, but I'm also like, you know what? A good person is going to be a good person at the end of the day. And that's all I think about. So
For
yeah,
sure.
we'll see how it goes.
Well, that's good. Good. I'm glad that you're taking more time for yourself this year and just gonna, do some more fishing with Doug and just learn like the woods and spend more time on yourself because I think that yeah, it can get to be a lot. And like you said, puts a lot of pressure on you to be a guide and know
Mhm.
the good spots. But to go off of what you just said with guys versus girls, I'm gonna be completely honest. I'm someone who's always struggled with girlfriends. Like I am a boy. I
Yes, I know.
I'm dirty. I want to be outside. I want to do all the things that girls don't want to do. And I'm rough around the edges. Like sometimes it doesn't seem like that to the eye, but I am. And I was raised by my dad to be like his boy because he didn't get a
Yeah.
boy, he had two girls. So
Yeah.
I don't know. So to me, I think that's also where my comfort with Kyle comes in is I know that he understands me and we're good. And to be honest, Jessie, I would probably be more apt to get into a boat with a guy,
Yeah.
other guy
I
than a girl. It's tough for me. And I think that's where the women's retreat 100% will put me out of my comfort zone and that it will be so good for me. And I think maybe that's just the tipping point that I need. But up until this year, I haven't been able to make that happen like mentally.
Yeah. Well, and I can relate to that. I mean, I grew up with brothers and I have like a core group of friends that are women that, I went to school with and stuff like that, but their lives changed, they have kids now or some of them, a lot of them don't fish. And so that's why I did it alone for so long and I still do it alone, but I've just found that being uncomfortable has like allowed me to meet so many amazing people. And like when I first started dating Doug, like we like were in totally different places. Like he lived in the United States. I was in like in Toronto or something. And we only fished together a couple times, but like he's introduced me to like his circle of people that I feel like so comfortable around. So that's the same way. I'm really glad that I did the women's retreat because to be honest, when I first like started putting it together, I was like, I like this idea because it was something that I wanted to do. There was a lot of girls on Instagram that I wanted to meet that had been talking to me for a really long time. And like, I'm in this weird spot because like, I said this actually, I don't know if this sounds weird, but like, I like have my parents have the resort and like, I have my own boat and stuff like that. And sometimes I feel like I'm like, do people want to like come to fish with me because like I have all of these perks? Like I'm like a friends with benefits. And I'm like, I like at the end of the day, I'm just like your average person. I just am like been blessed with my parents, working hard to like give me an opportunity to be at camp. And then, I worked hard to like become good at fishing and have all the things. Like I drove a freaking Pontiac, like an '08 Pontiac G6 until like last year, and it fucking like barely ran. And then Doug bought me a car because it broke down. We sold it for $600 because I spent all my money on fishing shit. Like, like all of the fancy stuff. And so, I mean, I'm lucky Doug spoils me as well, but I think it's really hard with social media to understand who a person is till you meet people in real life, right? Like it's like I can know who you are because I've talked to you online and I can see that you're a genuine person, but like some people on social media don't portray themselves as they are in person. And that was hard for me because I'm like, again, at the end of the day, I'm very empathetic, right? So I'm like, I don't want to show up and you tell me that you can, back a boat in and then we get there and you can't. And it's not that you can't do it because I'm not good at it either. It's just I don't want to think that you can do it because you've told me that, right? Like I'm like full transparency. Like I'm sure you've seen it. I cry on my stories. I do all of the things because I'm like, this is just who I am and I want to connect with those people. And I also want to instill that like belief in those people that you can be exactly who you are. And if you're a good person, like you're going to find good people. So I didn't want to do the retreat because I was like, I don't know, like and I don't want people to like I had some people at the show that like were like fans. And I'm like, this is so weird that I have fans. Like people will message me and then they'll be like, is this really you? And I'm like, guys, I'm a piece of shit. Like, I'm living at my in-laws right now, laying on the couch. Like you're cooler than me. Like I'm just so when I did the women's retreat and people came, I was like, oh, this is cool. Like the first year was like really cool. Like I got to fish with a lot of different people and Gabby is one of them. Like Bad Medicine Outdoors is her Instagram handle. And she's just like one of my like best friends now. And Savannah, who is my best friend, like I met her on social media and like these people like were so like I was like, okay, I want to know who they are. And I met them in real life. And I was like, why didn't I do this like 10 years ago? Like I'm
Right.
32 years old and I have three fucking friends. What am I doing here?
Right. Well, it's kind of the same with this podcast. Like, I get this idea and I'm like, I'm just gonna do it. Like, I've been thinking
Yeah.
about it for a long time. And it's like, Victoria, why didn't you reach out to these people before? Like,
Yeah.
I could have reached out to Sarah. I could have reached out to Renee, to you, and like made something of it. But instead, I'm like, well, I got to do a podcast that people actually like want to
Yeah.
talk to me, which
Yeah.
once again, still am obsessed with this idea and all the things. But yeah, it's tough. Like,
Well, you just never know. And like I remember the first Savannah Stenlund is just I've known her well since 2022, I think. Yeah, 2022. So she reached out to me on Instagram. I'd heard her name like once before. And she was working at St. Croix at the time. And so she was like in the fishing industry. She just like reached out to me. She's like, hey, like if there's ever an opportunity to fish with you, like I'd love to do it. Normally I would like read that message and like if I hadn't conversed with them before, be like kind of like, I don't know.
yeah,
But for some reason, I was like, oh, yeah, okay, sure. I was like, I'm actually having like a few girls up. Ashley Ray was coming up. Pam Stewart and Sarah Trampy were coming up in like, I think like a month. So I was like, hey, if you want to come and share a cabin with them, that's fine. Like my mom had invited Ashley up to do some like influencing stuff at camp. And she's like, yeah, sure, sounds cool. And like we kind of just like started talking. And she came to the retreat. And Doug and we were already married, but we were having like a wedding celebration 2 weeks from then. And I was like, hey, like, do you want to like come back for my wedding? Like, I low key wanted her in my wedding. That's how much I liked her. And now we FaceTime like literally 8 times a day. So I'm like, people have such a negative stigma about social media. And I'll say this on any podcast every time. I love social media because
yeah,
for me, I can, there is a lot of negative energy on it and stuff, but it's for me, it's more about like what you consume and like look at how many people you get to connect with. And so, like, yeah, maybe, you message someone and they don't answer, or maybe they answer 2 years later because, like, they just don't know. But, like, it's an opportunity for you to connect with people that really get who you are. And
Mhm.
that's why I want to be fully transparent. Like, if you want to, if you're like, oh, Jessie seems like someone I want to be friends with, what you see is what you get. Cause, like, that is me to a T. And, I want everyone that, comes up to camp, like I'm also, at camp, right? So anyone that comes up to camp to realize like I am exactly the person that you'll see online because you get F words and you get a lot of shit going on. But yeah, and so like the women's retreat came, we fished with a bunch of different women, and now I'm like, hey, like Gabby, like she's legit. She's good at figure eight. And I'm like, I want you in the front of my boat for Lake of the Woods. Like, let's go. And so it gives me an opportunity to now like step outside my comfort zone and stuff. And hopefully like I can still teach people and they teach me. Like people like, oh, you're like the expert woman musky fisherman. And I'm confident and I feel like I'm really good, but like I'm always learning too. So, and like I learned from people like we had a couple girls come up that like weren't that experienced. And I was like, oh, I'm learning something from her. Like she has some, like every person, every one of us has something to offer. So yeah, I hope that like I hope the women's week at Lake of the Woods is successful. I think as we kind of go, we'll figure out what kind of retreats they want. And what I expect people to get is what they want out of it, right? Like I don't want you. So when I did the women's retreat, I'm like, okay, so we'll fish like whatever bankers hours. Like this is what I'm expecting, like 8 to 5, 8 to 6, or whatever, coming for dinner, and we'll like have a couple beers on the deck, and we'll just like talk about fishing. Oh my god, I was like freaking boot camp. It was like, okay, I'm like, what time does everyone leave the dock? And I don't know if it's because like well, I think everyone wanted to, but I think everyone was like, okay, well, I got something to prove here, right? Like I gotta prove that like I'm like legit. And so they're like, okay, we'll leave the dock at like 6. And I'm like, fuck, I've been working all summer. And then like we get back at noon. We're back for like 10 minutes to switch boats. And then we fish till dinner. And then after dinner, it's like, yeah, you can use the boats if you want. Well, one person says they're going out, we're all going because like we're not letting one person do it. So it was literally 6 to 10 every night. Like girls were coming in at dark, and then we'd have like one beer, fall asleep, like drinking it. And then we'd do it again the next day. And we went hard for 3 days, but we were successful. And like, so I want people when they come to Women's Week on Lake of the Woods, whoever's coming, to get what they want. If you want to fish hardcore, find a partner that's there to do the exact same. Like I'm going to fish with people that want to fish for muskies. And like I said to Maria, who's hosting it, she's like, I come back for a sandwich. I said, oh, no, 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 no. I'm not coming back for a sandwich. Like I'm taking my sandwich to go. I'm leaving the dock. If there's a major at 7, I'm leaving the dock at 6. If there's a major at 6 o'clock, I'm staying out till then. And not to say you can't relax in my boat, because sometimes I just chill too. But if you want that experience of like hardcore fishing, that's what you get. But if you want to come and you're like, I only want to fish 8 to 4, then that's all you do. And they're like, we have like a masseuse, which I was like, I don't know about that. But then I was like, okay, that's actually kind of cool. Like if you want to just fish 8 to 4 and then get a massage, cool, you're getting a massage. Like, or whatever it is. If it's, still it's gonna be July, right? Sometimes it's really hot. And like I like to think I'm hardcore, but if it's 95 degrees and the fish aren't fighting or biting, I'm probably gonna go in for a little bit of a break mentally, because there's no sense of pushing yourself through the extremes if it's just gonna make your experience not enjoyable.
Yeah, I was talking to Maria at the show, and I'm hoping to have her on at some point to get like in the nitty-gritty with the details, but I don't know. I think it'll be cool. I plan to attend. I'm a little
Okay. I'm gonna hold you to it now.
yeah, well,
You got your phone number. I'll be like, what's your plan? Are you coming?
well, I am. I'm coming. I'm not allowed to back out, but I am anxious because I just have never done something like this. But I think that that's good. Like you said, that's how you grow, and I want to be better. I want to be able to do things on my own, and that's how you got to do it. You just got to jump. So,
Yeah. And I mean, I don't know if people say it because it's just me, but like anyone that had come to the resort, like I'm in a group chat with like 4 of them, and the other day, and the one girl was like, she's like still talking about it, right? And she's like, I just had such a good time. And that's what I want people to feel. So like, I don't want anyone coming in thinking like I'm some like snooty, like, oh, I'm the expert here. Like, I want you to come in and like have a good time. And like, if you don't, it's going to impact me. So like, some people don't get along with some people, and that's fine too. So, I always said like if you find someone that you want to come with, like encourage them to come. And I don't know what like Maria's plan is, but I said to Maria, if it's a 5-day retreat, that means 1 day travel on each end, so that's 7 days. It's a long time. So I don't know, and like I don't know the facts about it because it's her retreat, but I said, maybe you should look at like if people can't come the whole time, maybe they could come for 3 days or whatever it is, because I think that it's hard to accommodate everyone. So that's why we want to have the vibe where it's like you get the experience that you want. What is it coming in? And so we have this Facebook group. So once you join, like once you pay your deposit, you come into this group, and then our goal is you start talking to other people and you're like, hey, like say it's me and you. It's like I start talking to you. I'm like, oh, Victoria seems cool. I want to fish with Victoria. So you get to know people before you get there. So you're not just showing up and being like, whoa, who has everyone? It's like literally like me on social media because some like Gabby and Kayla were two girls that came to the retreat. I honestly had been talking to them for 5 years on social media. I'm like, they come there and I'm like, oh, you're my friend. And they're like, yeah. I'm like, this is weird. But yeah, so like it's good to, talk to people beforehand and then you can find, like, do you want to fish for muskies? Do you want to fish for bass? Do you want to fish for walleye? Do you want to fish for all of them? And so I'm really excited. I think it'll be fun and hopefully we can, encourage. There's a huge community of women. It's just like I started asking more questions of like, what do you want? Like, what's affordable for you? Because I know that's a thing too. Like, I mean, not everyone can just be like, oh, I'm dropping $1,500 to go on a fishing trip, right? So it's like, where is your comfort zone? A lot of people that came to my retreat did like payment plans where like they decided a year in advance that they were coming and then they just paid like $100 a month. And so they were like, that's easy. So and you'll when you talk to Maria and stuff like that, she'll explain it more, but like she's super laid back, down to earth, and like she wants to make this experience enjoyable but also feasible. So it's like she's willing to work with people on, payment plans or whatever it is just to get you there and ensure that you have a good time.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, I love it.
At Hartung Taxidermy, we specialize in preserving memories of the hunt or the catch. Tyler can create lifelike lasting memories that capture the essence of your experiences. What they offer? Custom taxidermy, specializing in turkeys to big game like bear, mountain lions, bobcats, and deer. We craft stunning pieces that showcase the unique characteristics of each animal. Why choose Hartung Taxidermy? Tyler is a skilled and passionate craftsman with years of experience. He creates detail-oriented, lifelike creations that stand the test of time. Also, affordable pricing and a commitment to the customer satisfaction. Bring your memories to life with Hartung Taxidermy. Contact them today to schedule a consultation. Call 715-416-4008 or visit him at Hartung Taxidermy on Facebook or Instagram.